This here is another viewer's broken gaming PC. Welcome back to Fix or Flop. This one apparently powers on but doesn't send a signal out, and it's been that way since this build's inception. So sort of like a kitchen sink system. It was thrown together with a bunch of spare parts, and the owner was pretty bummed that he couldn't get it up and running. He had a few parts to swap in. I think he tested the graphics card and a couple other things, but essentially just ran out of parts to use, to test with, and that's where we come in. See, one of our advantages is a parts closet. Behind me, I can throw pretty much anything I want into a rig like this and readily isolate variables, with few exceptions. Some things I have to order, but if we're dealing with a Ryzen platform or a modern Intel one, I probably have a spare component or two to work with. And that's really the gist. That's the roadblock that a lot of folks run into when troubleshooting on their own. It's actually pretty easy to narrow down a variable in a box like this because you know that the problem has to be in here. It's not like a car or something bigger where you're just probing every known place until something pops up. If it's a hardware issue especially, it's gonna be one of a handful of things, right? And you can isolate pretty much all of those within a few hours. But if you don't have components to swap in and isolate with, that's where the issue pops up. Now, some of you may have noticed this rig is not super stout, and that's totally cool, right? Not everyone needs a super high-end system or super modern one. This is using an Intel Core i5-12600K and, well, a relatively decent graphics card, a Gigabyte RTX 2060. There's a Be Quiet Pure Loop 360 in here, an Asus Prime B-Series motherboard, 32 gigs of DDR4, and a couple of pretty low-capacity drives, one SATA SSD and another NVMe. Oh, and if you're wondering, yes, the case is from CyberPower, so this did originate from a pre-built, but again, this was just thrown together with spare parts. It was not purchased this way. Also, realize that as you read this owner's description of his issue, I don't really care whether this system is a throw together, sort of like spare parts build, or if it was like a $2,000 or $3,000, huge investment, a huge chunk of someone's savings. I just can't look at things that way. Because if I did, then that might affect folks' willingness to even want to reach out in the first place. I don't want to set a precedent like that. I look at all builds the same. I hate to use a phrase like I don't see color, but it's kind of the same ordeal. Like, I don't care if the rig is small, large, I don't care if it's old, new, or a spare parts build or a super ultra high-end one. It doesn't matter to me. These are all gaming PCs more or less in the end, and I want to see all of them back on the road again. So that's why this being a spare parts rig, it might seem like, great, this doesn't seem like a high priority build. Why are you fixing it? It's a PC. I want to fix PCs in general, especially in this market where things are extremely expensive. I want this back on the road again. Maybe the owner can give it away, sell it to somebody. Maybe he's going to use it himself as like a second room PC. I really don't care. It's not my business. My business is just to fix PCs, and that's exactly what we're going to try to do in this video. I hope you will stay with me.
Are you sitting on a gaming PC without an activated copy of Windows? Forget $100+ retail keys. Instead, snag an OEM Windows 11 key for a fraction of the price to unlock the full potential of the OS. Oh, and don't worry, they'll still remove those pesky activation watermarks. Just click the links below to get started today, and be sure to use our special offer code SKGS for a sweet discount on a variety of options, including Windows 11 Pro, Home, and more.
Hello there, my crazy hair and I welcome you to another episode of Fix or Flop, a playlist where we attempt to fix broken gaming PCs like this one for free. That means we don't charge for labor or replacement hardware if necessary. That's thanks to your viewership. There's a link down below in the description if you want to submit your broken PC for a chance to be fixed for free. This is a really cool playlist. I'm really happy that so many of you click on these videos. And again, it's because of that we can continue offering this service. Right, let's jump straight into attempting to fire this thing up for the first time. Now remember, this should, at least on paper, turn on. The owner says that it does appear to power up, but it just doesn't send a signal, which is why I have our portable monitor here just in case. Let's go ahead and click the power button. All right. Now, the owner also said that 3 of these fans, the case fans actually, are not hooked up. So we shouldn't be too alarmed there. The ones connected to the AIO, however, for the radiator, those are spinning and those are clearly lit up. So let's give it a few seconds here and just see what happens on screen, if anything. If we do get a picture, then I imagine this might come down to just something as simple as maybe a bad display cable or something. Though I will say, after speaking with the owner in person, he does sound pretty tech savvy. He just, again, ran out of components to really swap in. That was why he reached out. And yeah, sure enough, it looks like we do not have picture. Alrighty, where do we go from here? Probably one of the fastest things to do is remove this graphics card as a variable. I would normally just run through the motherboard, through the CPU with onboard graphics. Problem though, the i5 in here is a 12600KF. The F SKU means we don't have integrated graphics, are typically a bit cheaper because of that. For troubleshooting purposes, that makes things a little more convoluted. What we can do though is remove the 2060 outright and swap in our good old 1030. That'd be this cutie right here. And this is known working. We've used it many times in the playlist in the past, so that's something that you definitely want to have checked out the list before you just start part swapping. Make sure that the part you're swapping in is confirmed working in another system. I also love the 1030 for its low power, sort of like, single slot access. It's very easy to throw into really any rig. And since it doesn't require supplemental power, it pulls everything through the PCIe slot. It makes wiring simpler as well. It can remove a potential power supply variable in the process, which we might have to account for if this gets the system running. The other elephant in this room is the vertical riser, which isn't probably too great for temperatures in this particular case. I'm trying to remove the supplemental 8-pin, while also be sure to bypass the extension just to make sure, though in my experience, extensions are typically pretty solid. Yes, even the cheap ones, it's difficult to get those wrong, unless you're talking about 12-volt high power. A quick visual inspection, what we can see so far in this 2060, we're not gonna be able to see much of the board. It's covered almost entirely by a shroud and backplate. The rear I/O does look to be in good shape. I don't see any crossed, bent, or missing pins, and the golden fingers also look good. I'm gonna see if I can get the camera to focus on the pins and not the shroud in front. There you are. This is always good to check over. You can do all this stuff without having additional hardware on hand. So that's why I like to show it, because I know, again, a lot of folks don't have extra graphics cards laying around. I don't see any broken or missing SMDs around any of these contact points either. So what's gonna happen when we throw in our 1030? We're about to find out. I will say it's a bit difficult getting cards in here. I gotta pull this cover. Okay, yeah, I gotta pull that vertical cover off. Then I can slot the card in. Again, we'll make sure that we run HDMI through this. Looks like things still power up, not too surprised there. Mainly just looking for a picture out. Again, that's gonna be our long-term goal here. And if swapping our 1030 does fix the issue, then we're gonna have to start narrowing down the smaller bits. These smaller variables like the riser cable, the 8-pin extension. It would be unfortunate if the 2060 is cooked, but it doesn't appear to be the case, because we still don't have anything on screen. I suppose this isn't the worst thing in the world. The fact that his RTX 2060 is not the cause of this symptom, whatever we're seeing here, means that it's probably not the culprit at all. It looks to be a pretty healthy card, a pretty clean one at that. This also tracks with what the owner told me. He tested this in a separate system and was able to get picture through it. I just need to verify this stuff with my own eyes, right? I can't make a habit of trusting anything anybody says in this space. It's like the trust but verify phrase. You have to. If you trusted everybody and everything everybody said, you wouldn't be getting very far in this industry. I suppose I should have done this a bit sooner. You can see the CL-RTC pins right here. We're gonna go ahead and jump these. This will clear the CMOS. It's effectively cutting the power to the volatile memory, which stores the BIOS settings and again, the clock settings and stuff like that. This is just a very quick way that you can rule out some sort of BIOS issue, compatibility, maybe like a setting that you change that's preventing your rig from firing up or behaving properly. All you need is a screwdriver or something conductive, and we'll hold it here for about 20 seconds or so. To be clear, I didn't expect this to do anything, and well, yeah, it didn't. We still don't have a signal out, but it's so simple to do. It literally takes seconds. It would be a sin not to tackle it early on. And speaking of quick and easy, one other thing we can very quickly do is isolate a RAM issue. This stuff is pretty easy to access in most builds. They are fully slotted as is, so I don't think it's a seating issue. I'm gonna remove both and swap in one known working DIMM into slot A2 and see what happens. This is my trusty LPX troubleshooting DIMM I've used over the years for DDR4 platforms. Really hoping this isn't the fix. As most of you know, RAM is expensive. So if this does post, it means we likely have an issue with one or both DIMMs. This is a 32 gig kit, so it would be a real shame if something was wrong with these. They are from the same kit as well, if you are wondering. The serial numbers line up, so it doesn't look like these were, hodgepodge from multiple systems or anything. This is probably the one instance where I'm really hoping that this doesn't work. Just to prove to you, and to myself, I think at this point I need a reality check that this monitor is in fact working. I've just reconnected the power cable, so you can see there, no signal. We're plugged straight into the 1030 still. Oh boy, we could do CPU socket. This is an Intel LGA platform after all. Could be a socket issue, maybe when the CPU was first installed. Could be power supply related, maybe 24 volt, or sorry, not 24 volt, but 24 pin or 8 pin EPS. at this point, I mean, I don't really have one recommendation over another other than just to approach whichever one is easier for you to rule out first. And I think I'm gonna do the power supply. So let's tackle that. Hopefully be able to rule it out. If this is like a socket damage problem, then we should be able to fix it. Or worst case, we replace the board. These are pretty cheap. I'll have to get a secondhand one, but shouldn't be too big an issue either way. I just wanted to quickly show you the 24 pin is fully seated, as is the 8 pin EPS. I think one more thing I'm gonna do before I tear the right side panel off is just disconnect everything non-vital. We'll stick with just the 24 pin and the 8 pin and see if the system fires up that way, because this could come down to a simple wiring issue. And what we'll do is manually jump the power pins with our screwdriver. So it's fired up. We're, hey buddy, what's up, Cash? Wanna say hi to the camera? No? Wanna say hi to the camera? Yeah. Trying to fix this one, it's giving me a hard time. Looks like the same RG behavior as well, likely due to a hub or something like independent of Windows behind the motherboard tray, which we'll shortly rule out because the right panel's coming off. Off we go. And well, it does look like it was cable managed, and it's cleaner than I was expecting back here. I can see again some of these fan cables that were not connected because we don't have enough fan hubs on the board, something we might be able to tackle later. These are all voltage controlled, which means I have to use a voltage hub, because if I don't, then these might run at full speed. I don't know if I have one of those laying around. I will say I don't see anything obvious in terms of miswiring back here, and it'd be difficult to do that anyway because this power supply is non-modular. Let's see what our inline tester tells us. We're hoping for no beeps. We've got the main stuff connected so far. Seems okay, all the voltages look good. How about ripple? Yep, looks fine to me. Timings, I'm not even sure what power supply this is. I think it was included in the description, I just didn't pay much attention to it. Yeah, I'm not really seeing a reason to swap the power supply at this point, at least. And that leaves us with really one of two possibilities. I don't see this going anywhere else. Either we have a defective board, and I'm gonna lump the socket into that as well. Maybe we have a damaged socket, or we have a bad CPU. Either could be plausible, especially if these components have been sitting for a while. Maybe they were pulled from rigs that were defective and they weren't troubleshot any further. Maybe they were purchased secondhand. I don't actually know the full story behind where all these components come from. I just know that when the owner first assembled all of it, it failed to play ball. So I think what we're gonna do is remove the CPU first. That's the easier task of the two, and inspect the socket and underneath the chip itself. Let's see what's hiding behind door. Oh man, I hate it when I can't get, I can't fully lift the socket because of the AIO mounting hardware. Can't we make these things a bit wider? All right, I'm just gonna swivel it a tad out of the way there. There we go. All right, now let's see what's behind door number one. It looks pretty clean. The underside of the CPU also looks very clean, no issues that I can see. This pretty much means we either have a defective motherboard or a defective CPU. Visually, both look completely normal. I don't see any burn marks on the board. Of course, the socket looks fine, as does the CPU. The question is, which one should I swap first? It's probably easier to swap in another CPU, just because the boards are, it's screwed down and there's still a bunch of wires and things in the way that I'd have to move otherwise. There is a small risk though that if this board is cooked enough, it could take my replacement CPU with it if it hasn't already for the owner's Core i5. So I'm willing to bear that risk just for the sake of possibly saving at least a few minutes. I don't really see how we end this video without at least testing the board with some CPU in some capacity. So it's gonna happen one way or the other. We've literally just been narrowing variables one by one. We've been systematically removing them from the equation so that our field of view is tighter and tighter. And we've really gotten to a crossroads where there isn't much else we can take away from this rig and still have it attempt to post. So I think we're gonna swap in a replacement CPU. Now, funny enough, I actually have a near identical replacement for his CPU if in fact it's to blame. This is a Core i5 12600K, but not an F SKU, which means it's actually slightly better. It has an integrated graphics processor, which is better for troubleshooting, the case we're in here. So what I'm gonna do is drop this replacement in. I'm not gonna bother reinstalling the CPU cooler. That's just gonna add more work. The system won't be on long enough for that to really matter. We'll also reconnect my known working DIMM. I've got the 1030 already slotted in here, and we'll try for a post. If this works, I'd say we're looking at a slam dunk CPU swap, no two ways about it. Though I would err on the side of this being a motherboard issue in most cases, just because there are more things that can go wrong with a board, right? It's a much larger component. It's exposed to the elements. It experiences different heat cycles in different locations, right? The VRM MOSFET area gets hotter typically than other parts of the board. The chipset area gets hot as well. And so that can cause some warpage and dislodging over time, just, degradation, right? It's what electronics does, unfortunately, in really all cases. But if I had to wager, I'd say the motherboard is the problem. So I expect this will not work. If it does, though, I mean, it's not the end of the world, right? It's a Core i5. I should probably turn the power on at the rear first. Let's do that. And I've reconnected the power pins. Alrighty, so we do have power. I'm gonna check the temperature of this chip. Oh yeah, it's heating up right away. It never really occurred to me that we're combining a K-series CPU from Intel with a B chipset board. So that is kind of weird. Yeah, that chip is scalding hot. And we're not getting a picture out, come on. No picture? Yep, nothing on screen. I know that CPU is absolutely baking right now as well. I don't like keeping these on for longer than about 20 seconds or so because especially in the unlocked SKUs where they tend to pull more power, they get very toasty very fast. I don't want to damage one of my CPUs. I think what we're gonna do is swap this board. There's really not much else we can do. We've pretty much isolated, swapped out every other component in this system. We don't have fans even connected for that matter, except for the ones for the AIO, but these are working just fine, so why would they be the problem? Everything else on the power supply side seems fine. We've only got the 24 pin and the 8 pin EPS connected along with our known working GT1030 and a known working stick of DDR4, mind you. So, yeah. It doesn't make sense why it would be anything else. I'm just running through variables in my head. Okay, so the one thing I didn't do earlier that I probably should have done when we were testing a different DIMM is I could have tried a different slot. I tried A2 and I didn't try like B1 or B2. I didn't try a different channel. If we have issues with traces between the CPU socket and the DIMM slots, then it's possible that even my working DIMM will not play nicely with this setup. That would result in a motherboard swap anyway, I suppose. So the fact that we're getting the exact same symptom with two different i5s and two different kits of DDR4, yeah, I mean, that still points us to the motherboard. So yeah, just thinking out loud there, we're gonna swap his board. Fortunately, I do still have one compatible 12th gen motherboard in the closet. These are getting a bit older. I'd say they're still relevant, but they're not making these really anymore. So the stock that I have is dwindling, but this is an N7 Z790. I've actually used this board personally for a few different builds. I really like the way it looks because it's super sleek. It's covered almost entirely by these shrouds, and it does have a pretty sweet feature set as well. So here we go, out carefully with the old. I was just about to say in with the new. I was trying to get his DDR4 pre-installed and I realized that these don't line up. This is actually a DDR5 board and I forgot that these mixed up DDR4 and 5 depending on the board you bought and the model. That is really freaking frustrating because again, this is the only board I have on hand. So I think we're gonna have to buy one. NZXT would have been convenient for you to throw, DDR5 support somewhere on the front of the box. I've got to really look for it. I'm not sure if it's even there. It's probably on the side. No, it's still not there. Where does it say DDR5 support? Ah, I've got to look at the back. Yeah, that is not ideal. There you go. 4 DIMMs, max 128 gigs, DDR5. One thing that absolutely drives me insane about Amazon, I love the fact that I can get stuff overnighted. This one, for example, I can get it tomorrow morning between 7 and 11 a.m. That's great, but this is not what I searched for. So I just typed in Z790 DDR4. It's showing me a B760M board, and okay, well at least it's DDR4, so at least it passed the mark there. You can see the one above it, okay, Z790, but then DDR5. That sneaky little DDR5 mention there. That throws this whole thing for a loop. So I've got to be very careful about what I select here. Like this one looks pretty good, right? 166 bucks. This is from ASUS. Right, that's not too bad. But then look at there, the sneaky DDR5. Again, even after I told it, I only want DDR4. Now you can swing over here and force it to search just for DDR4. But just know that if you type it into the search bar, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna throw that at you. And look at this, proof's in the pudding, right? I've got DDR4 selected right there, and it's still showing me DDR5. This is a joke. It's like the whole search engine for DDR4 versus 5 stuff is super broken on Amazon. So just be careful. I've made a mistake before of buying the wrong RAM board, and it's frustrating. I like that Intel gave us some flexibility with support, but it just convolutes things. I don't want to get him a B series chipset for his unlocked skewed CPU, but I don't think I'm going to have much of a choice here. So this one is DDR4, and it's $150. I can get it tomorrow morning. It's just not going to be Z790, and it's not even going to be ATX for that matter. So it's going to be the same size as what he has in there, which is going to look, a little silly. Not the end of the world, but I'm really trying to find something that works. This one is also B760, and that's DDR4. It's a pretty good price, but it's not going to show up for 3 days. And that's a little more downtime than I would like. This one looks pretty good. It's Amazon renewed, but it's DDR5. Like, this is just silly. Like, why? What are we doing here, Amazon? Can we not just filter out DDR5 stuff? This is crazy.
Day 2.
Here we are then. That wait wasn't too bad. This is about 24 hours later, a Pro B760M-P DDR4 from MSI. This was purchased for about $100 on Amazon, shipped, and that's not too bad. Again, the DDR4 part is super important here. And there just aren't many of these available anymore. They aren't making them anymore. It's I don't want to say a dated platform, but it is a bit older at this point. And because of that, our choices were limited. So no, this isn't really an upgrade. It is more or less a side grade. I hate the fact that it's an M-ATX board as well in an ATX chassis, that extra space below the graphics cards. It drives me crazy, but I think the owner will be happy with the fact that he'll at least have a working rig again, and it won't cost him a dime. That's really what we're after here at the end of the day. If I could upgrade you, great, but at the very least, as long as I can get your rig fixed, I'll call that a win. So we're gonna throw in his original CPU, his original DDR4, and I think he has an M.2 drive as well. We need to pull over, we'll get this all in there, and this time, cross our fingers, hopefully for the last time. Also, one other thing to note before we drop the new platform in, the fact that these standoff locations are correct for this M-ATX board that's about to go in, as well as the original that the owner had in his case. You can see this one especially can cause problems. If you have this installed where the board doesn't need it, then this standoff could end up shorting things, it could end up frying stuff. We've actually seen that happen in this playlist. So I just want you to know this was checked. I know I didn't mention it earlier in the video, but we shouldn't have any issues with shorting the way that the standoffs are installed currently. Ooh, and I actually just realized I forgot mounting hardware for the AIO. Again, the Pure Loop from Be Quiet. Now I was about to transfer this one over. You can see the mounts here for the screws that pass through the motherboard are a bit jacked up. So this is the X bracket that goes behind the socket. And these openings are supposed to be pretty squared off, I believe, if I recall correctly. I actually have a similar AIO in the closet. I might just pull that one because I can't even get the screws that pass through this to sit. They slide all the way through. And that's a problem for mounting pressure and possibly board integrity. In fact, you can see here, just for demonstration, so this is one of those screws, right? And this pops in from behind the motherboard. You can see I can basically just pass it right through. That shouldn't be the case because all of that mounting pressure is supposed to be stored right there around the collar of that screw. And if it's able to just pass right through the bracket, then most of that load will then be distributed to the PCB, so the motherboard itself. And that's no good. In fact, I want to take a closer look at the owner's original board now. So it looks like, yeah, I mean, there are just minor markings along the backside. It's not terrible. I figured it would be worse than that. The top side looks pretty decent as well. Well, I was gonna say it looks pretty decent. These three look good. So there's one that, oh yeah, whoa. Yeah, this thing dug in deep. I found our problem. This here has got to be our eureka moment. So you can see from the back sides here, these holes look okay. In fact, closer near the PCB, you can see there's some slight indentions. I don't think anything's punctured power planes though, so we should be good on this front. But when I flipped it over, this is when it got a little dicey. This one right here. Yeah, at first I thought that was just the sticker smeared a bit. Nope, my friends, those are exposed copper traces. Yeah, that's not good. And with my macro lens now attached, so you guys can see up close in fine detail those broken traces, those punctured copper lines that run to and from the socket. It looks like DRAM as well. This is not good. This doesn't look like a huge deal physically. Like, to the human eye, it's not a big blemish, so to speak, but this can affect stability across the board, prevent a system from posting, even prevent it from powering up. And I'm really surprised that this system was even allowed to turn on in this state because we definitely have some pretty serious shorts across multiple traces here. In fact, manufacturers will often, on their upright standoffs that pass through to CPU coolers, include these really thin plastic or composite O-rings of some sort that are supposed to prevent the metal in this material from digging into the PCB. The problem is, if you have an X bracket that's compromised and the pass-through screws that I just showed you are not catching onto it, then the owner might try to over-torque these, might try to keep, it'll keep spinning basically, it won't catch. He might be putting too much force down as he spins, which could cause the damage that we just saw. So I just wanted to show you kind of how this stuff works and why it is so important to not have a compromised bracket like that. I just realized I was getting ready to find a replacement for this. I thought that I had a Pure Loop 360 in the closet. I do. It's this one right here. One problem though, it looks a little different than the owner's. I think this is the updated version. It was sent a few months ago, and if I recall, that 360 in the owner's rig, based on the CPU block design, was the first iteration here in the States. I don't want to risk the X bracket in this box being different from this one. I don't want history repeating itself. I don't want to give the owner, any shadow of a doubt that this is going to work perfectly fine for years to come. So I'm going to play it safe and replace the entire Pure Loop 3 outright. Again, it's going to be the exact same TDP, more or less. It's got great fans on it, and it's going to have an updated warranty. If anything goes wrong, we reach back out to Be Quiet. They take care of us like they always do. But this unit is going to be linked in the description. If you want to support them, support us. They send us these units, and they also compensate us for using them in this playlist. I think it's a really great way to organically show off quality hardware. I've been using Be Quiet stuff for several years, way longer than before they ever decided to pay us for anything, and so I'm grateful for their support. I'm grateful for their products, and I'm ready to get this computer finally frickin' fixed. It's been a good while, and this is the second component we've had to replace, and it's really because of this that we even have a defective motherboard in the first place based on what we just found. So, alrighty, time for another transplant. Now, the new one is in. I think it's finally time to get our replacement platform in here. This time, of course, fitted with our new unbroken bracket, and you can see how it's supposed to look here. You see those double squares? So that keeps the pass-through screws from spinning, which allows you to torque down the upper standoffs on the top side of the motherboard. These are intact, of course. Again, it's a brand new one, so we shouldn't have this issue any longer. Nice and easy then. Hopefully this time is the last. And you can see we've got it all buttoned up. All the screws are in, as well as the cables, so HD audio, 24-pin, 8-pin EPS, etc. We just need to mount the cooler and then give it a whirl. Oh, and this guy, of course, we can't forget, and we suspect it is working. I also took some time to swap out these case fans. Now, I was on the fence about this. I thought about just leaving them. The problem is I don't have a 3-fan splitter for voltage-controlled fans. Most of mine are PWM, and for good reason. PWM is definitely the superior interface. It allows you to be much more versatile with your RPMs. You can get them very low or very high, whereas voltage is a little more stubborn in that department. So for quieter operation across the board, switching to PWM made sense. These are some Be Quiet Lightwings fans. I'll have these linked below as well if you're interested, but I'm not gonna hype these too much more. I believe that's pretty much it. I think we're ready to go. I might be speaking too soon. We've got, of course, the graphics card hooked up as well, and we've got power. Let's just go. Let's just go for it. I kind of jumped the gun here. I really should have tested this in a more constructive setting without reconnecting everything ahead of time. This could end up biting me in the butt, but I'm pretty confident based on what we've just seen with the owner's original board that this swap is going to fix things. Here we go. Alrighty, off to a good start. It looks like everything's spinning. DDR4 is lighting up. Do we have LEDs for our case fans? No, we do not, at least not yet. Oh, but we do have a post. Wow, that was super fast. One problem did pop up though that I really didn't think about until it was probably too late. These Lightwings fans can only operate over a 3-pin ARGB interface. The hub, of course, unifies multiple 3-pin products, but you still need a 3-pin connection to the motherboard for all of that to be controlled, which means they aren't gonna light up. So, yeah, I mean, at the very least, he'll have proper airflow now, whereas again, the original case fans were not gonna spin at all. And these are more premium fans than the ones he had. He'll get all of that stuff back, by the way. I'm not keeping any of it, I have no need to, so he can repurpose it however he wants, but I do wanna point that out. These aren't gonna light up, unfortunately. There are $20 solutions like this one here from Up Here that I will recommend if he's that concerned about it. I imagine he will be, but I'm, again, much more concerned about this actually firing up and posting. It's jumping into automatic repair, probably because it's been reset a few times, but that is fantastic news. we never got a picture before. This is the first time we've seen that, and it's all because we swapped out a damaged motherboard. I chatted with the owner of this PC a bit when he dropped it off, and he mentioned that since this was sort of a throw-together system, he really had no chance to get it to post, or for that matter, load Windows onto either of his two drives. There's a 240 gig, I believe, Samsung SSD in here, as well as either a 240 or 256 gig Kioxia NVMe. These are pretty small capacities, not ideal for 2026. That's like one Call of Duty title, but we have to work with what we have here. And so I told him that the faster of the two drives, that being the Kioxia NVMe, should have his Windows OS installed on it. That's what I've taken care of here. Again, he had really nothing sensitive on either drive since they were pulled from other systems. And now I'm happy to report that this PC does consistently reboot into this Windows welcome screen, which I'm going to leave as is. I want him to sign in, set things up. Again, he's fairly experienced here. He just ran out of parts and suspected that it was either the motherboard or CPU to blame, though I will say the explicit culprit here being exposed traces on account of an improperly mounted CPU cooler was not really what I was expecting. I am glad we do have some physical, I guess, fulfillment here. Getting to actually see physical damage on this motherboard and how it happened can be useful for others who are possibly considering building a PC here in 2026. So it's great that the system does consistently reboot here. The owner knows that he needs to reinstall graphics drivers and things, but we've come a long way with this PC. It's taken a couple of days because we've had to order a replacement board, but that seems to have really been the only holdup here. And I'd say that's a relief because this very easily, very quickly could have become a multi-component failure. And the reason I say that is because exposed traces anywhere near the CPU could cause pretty severe damage. Had there actually been a short instead of just severed traces to begin with, which I suspect is really all we're looking at here, there could have been some pretty extreme side effects. I mean, we're talking sparks, fire, smoke. Remember the NZXT H1 issue where there wasn't proper shielding around risers included with that chassis, right? So that can, under certain scenarios, cause a short, an arc, and that could cause a spark, that could cause a fire. And I think the only reason that didn't happen here was because Be Quiet included these little plastic washers on the undersides of these standoffs. Had this plastic washer not been here and the metal standoff pressed directly against these traces, we could have seen something pretty severe, or rather the owner could have. And so I'm happy that we caught it when we did. I'm happy that the owner didn't, persist in trying to get this thing to power up. The more times this fired up, the more risk there really was of something going wrong, especially as that plastic bent more and more under that pressure, was exposed to heat and, all the stress that involves. So I think we really got lucky here with the timing, and I'm glad that we were able to avert disaster, more or less, by just getting rid of the board entirely, popping in another. Again, it's not an ideal one. It is MATX. It's not a Z series board, but I'll take a working system any day over one that doesn't. So here you go. So much cleaner again. Now, if you or someone you know has a broken system like this one and you'd like a chance to have it fixed, again, you can submit a form. It is linked in this video's description. It will not cost you a dime whether we have to replace components or not. All we ask is that you drive out in person to drop it off and pick it back up again. We'll do our best to get back to as many inquiries as we can as soon as possible. I think, again, we've got like 2 or 3 more in the pipeline. I have another system to fix. It's literally in the closet next to me, so we're gonna jump straight into the next episode right after filming this one. Thank you again so much for watching this one. Thank you for your continued support. Be sure to show Be Quiet some love in the description, and thanks for learning with me.